The Islamic world. 1,200 years ago, its golden age began. An era of invention, of scientific progress, but war will be waged in the Middle East as Christian Europe invades in the name of faith. Until the sword of steel meets the sword of the spirit, the greatest exchange of cultures ever seen, leading to the rise of Europe. Everything began in Mecca, a trading center on the edge of the desert. At God's command, it will become the center of a new religion. A message in Arabic is to unify the peoples of Arabia. It is carried out into the world in God's name. From Arabia, Islam surges into Europe. In the West, the advance is halted at the Pyrenees. Attacks on Rome are beaten off. But Muslims find a permanent place on the Italian islands and in Spain. On Spanish soil, the invaders create a culture that will go down in history as a golden age. Cordoba in the year 875. Strange activities arouse the curiosity of the neighbors. The man behind the hard work is Abbas ibn Firnas. He's already made a name for himself as a poet, mathematician, and inventor. Now, blacksmiths, tailors, and carpenters are putting together a revolutionary contraption from his plans. Ibn Firnas has worked on his secret plans for years. Inspired by the wings of a dove, he plans to overcome gravity. The dream of flight. Ibn Firnas is determined to make it a reality.
From the 9th to the 12th century, that is, in the early Middle Ages, Muslim science and philosophy were far ahead of the Christian West. And Muslims had an enormous desire to learn in those times. From Hellenistic culture, they learned philosophy, science, and medicine. They learned from the Indian and Persian cultures. And in the time of classical Islam, they represented the greatest and strongest culture in the world.
With a center in Cordoba, Ibn Firnas's home city, still breathtaking today. Contemplating these buildings inspires awe and admiration. Like the great mosque of Cordoba. In those times, no one in Europe could build anything like it, in scale or in delicacy. On the outskirts of this city, Ibn Firnas has been preparing his undertaking with great care. 600 years before Leonardo da Vinci, 1,000 years before the Wright brothers, Moorish Andalusia sees history's first documented attempt at human flight. He has carried out endless experiments before the first great trial, testing the size and shape of his wings. But one day, Ibn Firnas must put his ideas to the test. The flight of Ibn Firnas. He soars over many hundreds of feet. But as he comes down to land, he loses control. Ibn Firnas crashes and breaks both his legs. It's touch and go whether he'll live. But he's lucky. He lives in Cordoba. This city on the river Guadalquivir is the Muslim metropolis in Spain. Mighty defenses still tell of the time when Cordoba was the greatest city in Europe. Chronicles speak of 113,000 houses, 600 mosques, 300 baths, and 50 hospitals. Ibn Firnas, the pioneering aviator, is carried to one of them. The open wound is treated by a trained surgeon. The hospital apothecaries mix ointments to prevent infection. An infusion of herbs reduces the patient's pain. Arab doctors have developed a wide range of surgical instruments. They know basic rules of hygiene and observe them strictly. Ibn Firnas has a good chance of surviving his accident. With this systematic approach, Arab medicine is miles ahead of any other medicine of the times.
That was the great strength of the Arabs, the way they systematized everything. That gave them much more confidence in treating individual cases.
In the Christian West, things look different. Disease is seen as God's punishment, and healing is sought at the altar. Healing for the epidemics of plague that keep returning to Northern Europe, laying waste to entire populations. There's no knowledge of hygiene here. Faith is the primary medicine. The legacy of Islam will change that. Ibn Firnas's experiments in Cordoba will one day inspire European aviators, but not yet. Fellow Islamic scientists and scholars see no need for man to fly. Arabic science is, in the main, practical. The treatment that cured Ibn Firnas will soon be widely known in Europe, and Arab medicine has itself been compiled from ancient sources.
The Arab physicians played an important role in translating the Greece medicine, Persian medicine, and Indian medicine into Arabic. Then this medical heritage translated into Latin and entered to Europe.
700 years after Ibn Firnas was healed, the apothecaries of the city of Milan in Italy donated a stained glass window to their cathedral. Not to honor a saint, but to commemorate the greatest physician of the Islamic world, Ibn Sina, Avicenna. Avicenna was born in Bukhara in today's Uzbekistan, a city with a reputation as a beacon of knowledge in the Islamic world. At the end of the 10th century, his thirst for knowledge brings Ibn Sina to the greatest libraries of the city. Inscriptions above the doors urge Muslims to pursue the search for wisdom. For Avicenna, that search became a way of life. He compiles a medical textbook, the Canon, the standard work for the training of doctors in the West for 500 years.
The Canon Medicinae became the basis of medical studies at the University of Paris. You could say that until the mid-16th century, medical studies were not possible without Avicenna.
For an injury like Ibn Firnas's, a fracture where the bone is exposed, Avicenna recommends wrapping the wound in an ointment of comfrey root, Symphytum medicinale. Modern-day researchers recreate his recipe. The root is peeled and then cut. It's crushed in a mortar and pestle. Then, it's dried and finely ground. The symphytum powder is mixed with hot tea that is soaked in the leaves of the comfrey plant. Placed on a saturated bandage, this mixture should not only prevent infection, but according to Avicenna, it should also speed up the healing of the broken bone. And his treatments work. Today in the lab, they can finally isolate the active ingredient, allantoin, a substance that restricts inflammation and encourages growth. It saved the life of Ibn Firnas and many after him, in the East and West. But one more link is necessary for this learning to pass to the West. The Benedictine monastery at Silos in northern Spain holds a unique document that reveals how this knowledge was transferred. In the Silos monastery, a manuscript is kept under lock and key. But it isn't its message that makes it so precious. The Silos Missal is from the 11th century. It's a simple book of church services and hymns for every part of the year. It's significant because of the stuff it's made of.
La abadía de Silos conserva varios manuscritos de época que nosotros llamamos.
We have many manuscripts written in Gothic script, but it's not the fact that it's written in Gothic script that makes this so special. It's the fact that it's the oldest surviving European manuscript written not on parchment, but on paper.
In the West, paper is unknown. Only Muslims could provide the formula for the paper on which this book was written. And we know exactly how the Moors did it. In the Spanish city of Valencia, the Paper Museum recreates the methods used to make the first paper in Europe. Linen, hemp, and cotton are the cheap raw materials for the manufacture of paper. Moorish illustrators demonstrate the production methods in a 1,000-year-old instruction manual. They use stamping boards to break down the plants into a mass of fibers, and then they add water. After stirring, fine sieves skim the liquid, and the result is an even layer the size of a sheet of paper. Each sheet is laid on a separate piece of felt to dry. The press removes the last traces of fluid from the pile of felted paper. Papermaking originated in China, but true to form, the Arabs discovered new raw materials and pressing and milling techniques that made mass production possible. Paper is light, inexpensive, and can be used anywhere. Scribes use it to reproduce the caliph's orders to his administration. Messengers speed the ruler's will to distant corners of the empire. Laws, taxes, proclamations can be applied everywhere at the same time. But paper doesn't only serve as the stamp of authority. It's the universal carrier of knowledge. Something Receded, Bishop of Granada in southern Spain, knows very well. In the 10th century, he orders a book to be made out of paper that will record the technological wonders of the age, the Calendar of Cordoba. Illustrations bring to life the great machines of the region before the reader's eyes. Mills, the heavy machinery of the Middle Ages. The new mills designed by the Arabs are bigger and more efficient than anything seen before. These are milestones of technology. Their remains can be seen at Guadalquivir, near Cordoba. The Moors who invaded Spain from North Africa brought Arab irrigation systems to Andalusia. Within a few decades, they transformed the parched country of southern Spain into a land of fertile plantations. The Calendar of Cordoba illustrates that change. Bishop Receded has made a fine career in the church under the Muslim caliphs. This calendar is the mark of his gratitude and his admission of homage to the technical superiority of his Muslim masters. Receded personally presents his calendar to the caliphs at their headquarters, Medinet Ashara, the shining city a few miles outside Cordoba. Here, he is granted admission to a world that remains closed to most Christians. This was once the most splendid of all Islamic palaces. A rare visitor from the Christian north enthused. This beautiful young city is an adornment for the world. It is blessed and radiant in the full possession of all qualities. For Muslim art and science, it is the golden age. But some modern Muslim scholars believe this is a dangerously misplaced nostalgia. Medinet Ashara is destroyed in dynastic squabbles after just 80 years.
I think terms like the Golden Age are problematic. The truth is that there was no golden age in Islam. Even in the most golden of eras, there was an enormous amount of conflict and anger and violence and everything that one would expect in any kind of society, whether it's an empire or whether it's a state.
For instance, there is religious tolerance in Moorish Spain, if you behave yourself. But when you break the rules, Islamic law applies to all faiths. Digna, Felix, and Anastasius have publicly insulted Muhammad and the Quran. For this, these fanatical Christians must die, the first of the 48 martyrs of Cordoba. In the Middle Ages, anyone who breaks the laws of faith is mercilessly punished. It would be exactly the same in the Christian world. The Islamic Empire now stretches from east to west over 3,700 miles and 3 continents. By comparison, the fledgling Christian kingdom of the Franks to the northwest in today's France and Germany is small, primitive, and backward. But in the year 800, the Frankish king Charlemagne proclaims his Holy Roman Empire. The somber imperial headquarters, the cathedral at Aachen, can't compare with the great Islamic palaces and mosques. But the founding of this empire marks the beginning of a change that will bring the Christian West glories it has not known since Rome. Christians rule in Northern Europe, but they dream of Jerusalem, their holy city. 500 years before, Christians found a cave in a Jerusalem quarry that they believe is the tomb of their Savior, Jesus. They build a memorial over the site. Over the centuries, the monument will grow into a mighty complex. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Long after Muslims have conquered Jerusalem, this is still the holiest place for Christians. They throng to Christ's tomb, bringing gifts. Until the year 1009, when Muslim fundamentalists plunder the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and burn it to the ground. Christians and Jews are cut off from their most sacred shrines. For Christians, it is an atrocity and a provocation. Yet the broader relationship between the Islamic and Christian worlds functions on a different, more solid basis. This is Bodrum in Turkey, the Museum for Underwater Archaeology. Pride of place in the collection goes to the glass wreck of Serçe Limanı. The remains of this merchant ship were found off the south coast of Turkey in 1977. They speak volumes about Mediterranean trade at a critical period.
Ship's construction can give us some clue about destination because it is very flat bottom keel. That is also, they can make some sailing for the river sailing too.
With the knowledge of where the ship could have sailed, it was left to the different cargoes to provide the full story. These jars storing oil and wine were inscribed in Latin with the initials of their Christian owners. The raw glass on board was made by Syrian Muslims to be turned into glasses and bottles by Christian glassblowers in Europe. The ship carried goods to and from east and west. And we know exactly when it sank.
Among them cargo, we found some gold coins, some glass weights, and there was some Arabic writing on that. And that is giving the date of the ship, and 1024 or 1025 after Christ, before the Crusader.
70 years later, in 1095, this flourishing trade is interrupted as the Pope persuades the unemployed young knights of the Holy Roman Empire to win back the sacred Christian sites in Jerusalem. By 1099, the French and German crusaders are standing before Jerusalem's walls. They storm the holy city. Jerusalem is home to Muslims, Jews, and Christians. The Knights can't tell them apart. God will recognize his own, is their battle cry. The massacre lasts 3 days. 30,000 people lie dead. This orgy of violence sees the beginning of the Christian occupation of the Middle East. Events that have stained relations between Islam and the West ever since. The Crusaders now build a line of castles to make their pilgrim route safe and stamp Christian authority on the Holy Land. The Crusader states they create slice straight through the world of Islam, dividing it in half, with grave consequences for its future development. Communication across the Islamic world breaks down. The east-west route linking Africa and Asia is blocked. Yet the armored knights from Europe can only move with care outside their strongholds. As unpopular occupiers, they are the victims of frequent attacks. The warriors of a Shiite Muslim splinter group join in the struggle. The assassins. In the Western world, they and their acts become the stuff of legend. Notorious not for the small number of their victims, but for their willingness to die for their cause. But what exactly is their cause? Their base is the fortress of Masyaf in Syria. Their descendants are the Ismailis, led today by the Aga Khan. The assassins can be a little difficult to explain away.
Well, I mean, I think, first of all, it's important to comment on the fact that the Ismaili community is very pluralist. But there are things that have been said and written which are just not very correct.
Today, the descendants of the assassins dedicate themselves to peaceful cultural activities. For example, restoring their fortress of Masyaf from the time of the Crusades. Perhaps today, as then, it's a question of remembering who they are against the odds.
The cultural illustrations of history are extremely important. First of all, to maintain a sense of identity. And I think that you can look around you today and you can see what happens to communities or populations that have lost their sense of identity.
It is 90 years before a Kurdish general restores Muslims' sense of identity and self-confidence. Saladin. Saladin is commander of the armies of Damascus. After the ruler dies, he takes over. In 1187, he leads the united forces of Islam in a great battle against the Crusaders. At Hattin, the warriors from Europe, once thought to be invincible, are defeated. His success in battle makes Saladin a hero to all Muslims. Saladin's mausoleum in Damascus becomes a place of pilgrimage for those who still dream of a lost golden age of Islam. Saladin reconquers Jerusalem. The Dome of the Rock becomes the symbol of Muslim control over the holy city. Saladin spares the leaders of his Christian enemies. A king does not kill a king, he says. Now, a monarch appears from the west who will do the unheard of: negotiate with Islam. A Christian emperor, but one who has taken up Islamic habits, like falconry. Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II. The first European monarch who chooses to learn from Islam. Frederick II rules his sprawling realm from southern Italy. The Kingdom of Sicily has come under his control by marriage. But for a long time, Muslim Saracens left their mark on this land. To the Saracens that have remained, the emperor shows generosity and political savvy. He settles the Muslims in the garrison town of Lucera, and he turns them into his most loyal soldiers. It's a rare kind of tolerance. Frederick also takes a pragmatic approach to the struggle for Jerusalem. He sets out to negotiate. He may never really have played chess with the Sultan of Cairo, but the agreement he obtains, free access for Christians to pilgrimage sites in the Holy Land, is a fact. A crusade of reconciliation without bloodshed. His very success makes him an anathema to many fellow Christians. They see Frederick the Peacemaker as the spawn of the devil. Nothing less than a monster threatening Christendom. Frederick II is still a puzzling figure today, just like his most famous legacy, the Castel del Monte. But this fortress offers some clues to understanding the emperor.
The message of the Castel del Monte is one of tolerance. Frederick's empire contained people of many different cultures and religions, and the emperor wanted to do justice to this fact in every way he could. So Frederick II united in this structure, harmoniously, as many architectural elements as there were peoples in his empire.
The clearest expression of this is in its shape. An octagon, it quotes the buildings of every culture, and it links east and west. The country that Frederick II rules in southern Italy is intended to do the same.
The state that Frederick II founds in Italy is a state of civil servants in the Oriental mold. Power is concentrated at the center, in one person. In order to educate the administrative elite he needs to run his state, he creates his own university in Naples.
It still bears his name. Frederick II was a 13th century visionary. His southern Italian empire has absorbed the legacy of the Orient. It's a legacy from the centers of Arab Islamic culture. Damascus and Baghdad had accumulated ancient Persian, Indian, and Chinese knowledge. In the 12th and 13th centuries, this knowledge reached the West via Italy and Spain. Naples, and above all, Toledo in Spain, are the bridges for the transfer of knowledge. As early as 1085, the city of Toledo was reconquered by the Christians, together with all its Muslim libraries. The new rulers are quick to set up a school for translators. It still exists. In the 12th century, this city sees a transfer of cultures without precedent via a new translation technique, the viva voce method. The Arabic text is read out loud and roughly translated into Romance, the early form of Spanish. After a short discussion, the approved translation is set down in Latin. Today, they're testing this technique. The result may not be as precise as one translator working alone, but it is incomparably faster. The right system when there is such an intoxicating thirst for knowledge.
The knowledge won in this way caused a scientific revolution in Europe. It was the foundation of a development that, 2 centuries later, would become the Renaissance.
The legacy of the Orient leads to a great leap forward for the West. The Renaissance ushers in Europe's golden age. Florence, in northern Italy, is one of its centers. It is here that the image of the confident, modern individual first takes shape.
The Renaissance developed in the West through art, but also through technology and new philosophical insights. The Reformation took place. The religious individual became autonomous. All this made possible a great surge forwards.
A surge that encompasses the whole of Europe, building on the foundations of the achievements of the Orient. Navigational instruments through which the heavens could be explored. The Arabic and Indian numbering systems with which Europe would henceforth do its mathematics. Muslim medicine and surgical instruments revolutionizing the healing arts in Europe. Oriental fruits and spices enriching European cuisine. Paper as the basis of knowledge and its dissemination. While the mill becomes the heavy machinery of the modern age. And at this very moment, Islam is threatened by a new enemy from the East. The Mongols, savage warriors from the steppes. Sweeping in from the endless plains of Central Asia. Their 13th century leaders, the Khans, build them into a fearsome and unpredictable force. In 1258, they attack and take Baghdad. The chronicles tell of appalling brutality. Hundreds of thousands perish in the battles and their aftermath. The conquerors build pyramids of skulls. And knowledge, too, is a victim in this orgy of destruction.
The assault of the Mongols was a terrible blow. The complete destruction of Baghdad and other cities. The lands of the eastern Fertile Crescent, between the Tigris and the Euphrates, were laid waste for centuries.
Verwüstet und zerstört.
The fall of Baghdad does not mean the end of Islamic culture. At the edges of the empire, it continues to flourish. In Samarkand, today's Uzbekistan, descendants of the Mongol invaders and others take up the religion of Islam and create cities of a new splendor. This is the mausoleum of a 15th century ruler who had his own vision of a Muslim golden age, Ulugh Beg. His passion is not on earth, but in the sky. In Samarkand, he constructs a mighty building devoted solely to the observation of the heavens. Ulugh Beg plans to compile star charts to surpass those of the ancients. His catalog will fix the exact positions of 1,018 heavenly bodies. It will be another 200 years before European astronomers outdo his achievements. Ulugh Beg's observatory is close to the city center, a giant circular building that outshines the greatest mosques of the city. But this blossoming of Islamic science will not last. Once again, religious fundamentalists tear down the temple of knowledge. To punish the arrogance of the human spirit towards God. Only the underground part of the observatory escapes destruction. It conceals a gigantic sextant used to study the movements of the sun. Ulugh Beg's scientists calculated the length of a year at 365 days, 6 hours, 10 minutes, and 8 seconds. Today's latest figures differ from these 15th century calculations by just 58 seconds. Ulugh Beg's scientific achievements fail to impress his contemporaries. After political unrest, he is deposed, forced to go on a pilgrimage to Mecca. Ulugh Beg has little time to reflect on his sins. His son has him murdered on the way. His science lives on only through its transfer to the West, like so much of the knowledge of the Orient.
The point is, it was a stimulus of thought for the West. The West had reached such a low point, culturally and scientifically. But it was prepared to develop. It was open to new thinking.
And to new worlds. At the end of the 15th century, the age of discovery begins. Advances in shipbuilding and navigation make it possible. European seafarers discover America and the sea route to India. The old Arabic trade routes lose their importance. Quite suddenly, Europe has the advantage, and the Muslim world seems to have fallen too far behind to catch up. The year Columbus discovers America, Muslims lose their last stronghold in Western Europe. Under the pressure of the Christian advance, the Emir of Granada quits Spanish soil forever. He leaves his city without a battle in order to save it from destruction. Granada's Alhambra Palace remains a shining reminder of the golden age of the Islamic world. Islamic science and learning will now stagnate for 500 years. But not Islamic power. In the East, the situation is quite different. A resurgent Muslim power besieges the last remaining Christian stronghold on the borders of Asia. The Turkish Ottomans attack the city of Constantinople, still the biggest and richest city in Christendom, ushering in the mightiest Muslim empire of all time.